What you're about to hear will shock you. This is my story. I'm Margaret, a 73-year-old grandmother who trusted my son completely. 6 months ago, I discovered he had stolen everything from me while I was cooking his dinner every night. My own son took my house, emptied my bank accounts, and turned my family against me. But he made one mistake. He underestimated his old mother. My name is Margaret Chen, and I've been through hell and back. Let me tell you how my own son nearly destroyed me, and how I fought back to reclaim my life. I was married to my David for 46 years. We met in 1972 when I was working as a secretary at the local steel mill where David operated heavy machinery. It was love at first sight. He would bring me coffee every morning and leave little notes on my desk. We married in 1973 and bought our first home on Maple Street for $28,000. David worked double shifts while I managed our finances. I had a natural talent for saving and investing that impressed even our bank manager. I raised 4 children: Sarah in 1974, Robert in 1976, Jennifer in 1980, and finally Michael in 1982. I ran our household like a business, budgeting every penny, clipping coupons, finding ways to stretch David's paycheck. In the 1980s, I convinced David to invest in rental properties. While other families struggled, we built wealth slowly but steadily. I started a catering business from our kitchen and invested those profits wisely. David always joked that I was better with money than the bank. While he earned it, I made it grow. My children grew up in a loving home. I insisted on family dinners every night, helped with homework, made sure each child learned the value of hard work. Sarah became a nurse, Robert went into construction, Jennifer became a teacher, and Michael was different. He was charming and funny, but struggled to hold steady jobs. He married young, but divorced by 35, always needing help with rent or car payments. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, David and I enjoyed our golden years. We traveled, spoiled our grandchildren, watched our investments grow. I had built a portfolio worth over $300,000 by the time David retired in 2015. But in 2018, David was diagnosed with lung cancer. I became his full-time caregiver, driving him to treatments, managing his medications, handling all our financial affairs while he fought the disease. David passed away in February 2019, leaving me alone for the first time in 46 years. Our house suddenly felt enormous and empty. I'd wake up expecting to make coffee for 2, then remember I was alone. My children were supportive but busy with their own lives. Sarah was working long shifts at the hospital while raising teenage twin boys. Robert had started his own construction company. Jennifer had just given birth and was exhausted. It was Michael who stepped up in June 2019. "Mom, you shouldn't be living alone in this big house," he said. "Let me move in and take care of you. I can handle the yard work, help with maintenance, make sure you're not lonely." I was touched by my youngest son's concern. Michael had always been the most affectionate of my children, quick with hugs, and "I love you, Mom." After his divorce, he seemed genuinely grateful for a fresh start. Michael moved in that July, and initially, everything seemed wonderful. He made me coffee every morning just like David used to. We'd watch old movies together in the evenings, and he'd tell me funny stories about his day. I felt less alone with Michael there. When neighbors commented on how lucky I was to have such a devoted son, I beamed with pride. In August 2019, Michael brought up estate planning. "Mom, for your protection, we should add my name to the house deed. Just for convenience, if something happens to you, it'll make everything easier for the family. No probate, no legal hassles." I thought it made perfect sense. I'd watched friends struggle with complicated inheritance issues. Michael was living in the house, helping maintain it. Why not make him a co-owner? I met with a lawyer who explained the paperwork. Adding Michael as a joint owner would simplify things if something happened to me. I trusted my son completely and signed the documents. What I didn't realize was that those papers gave Michael much more control than I intended. Over the next year, life settled into a routine. I continued hosting Sunday family dinners, though they became less frequent. Michael would often say they were too much work for me. Mom, maybe it's time to simplify these big family gatherings. Everyone's so busy, and it's really stressful for you to cook for 12 people. I began to notice my other children visited less often. When I'd call Sarah, I often got voicemail. Robert seemed rushed when we spoke. Jennifer was always dealing with baby issues. Michael had explanations for everything. Sarah was overwhelmed at the hospital. Robert's business was demanding. Jennifer was exhausted with a colicky baby. They're all dealing with their own problems, Mom. Michael would say, they don't need you adding to their worries. Gradually, my world grew smaller. The weekly phone calls with my children became monthly, then sporadic. The big Sunday dinners became quiet meals for two. I told myself this was natural. My children had their own families. Michael encouraged this isolation, always with caring motivations. You don't need to call Sarah every week, Mom. She's got enough stress. Robert's working 7 days a week. Let's not bother him. Jennifer's barely keeping her head above water with the baby. By late 2020, I rarely spoke to my other children without Michael present. He'd often answer my phone, explaining I was napping or not feeling well. He'd relay messages and make plans on my behalf. I trusted Michael's judgment completely. When he suggested I was getting forgetful and might benefit from his help managing finances, I didn't argue. Mom, you paid the electric bill twice last month. He'd say, and you forgot about the property tax deadline. Maybe I should help you stay organized. I didn't remember paying bills twice or missing deadlines, but Michael seemed so concerned and helpful. I agreed to let him assist with financial management. In January 2021, Michael suggested I make him a joint owner on my bank accounts for convenience. He explained that if I became ill, he'd be able to pay my bills without legal complications. I signed the paperwork, trusting my son completely. I thought it was smart planning. What I didn't know was that Michael had been researching financial elder abuse techniques online. He'd studied how to gain legal control over elderly parents' assets. He knew exactly what documents to prepare and what explanations would seem reasonable. Over the next 3 years, Michael systematically drained my accounts. He started small $500 here, $800 there withdrawals that could easily be explained as household expenses. But as my other children became more distant and my world shrank to just me and Michael, the thefts became bolder. Michael was withdrawing $300, then $500, then $800 at a time. I never saw the bank statements. Michael had them mailed to a P.O. box, explaining it was safer than having financial documents delivered to the house. During this time, Michael was living a double life. To me, he was the devoted son making coffee every morning. But Michael was also frequenting expensive restaurants, gambling at casinos, leasing a luxury BMW, and taking weekend trips to Las Vegas, all funded by my life savings. I occasionally wondered about money, why certain bills seemed higher or why my investment statements looked different. But Michael always had explanations. Utilities have gone up, Mom. I moved money into higher, yielding CD for better returns. Property tax increased because the house value went up. That's good news. I trusted Michael's financial expertise. He seemed to understand investment strategies that I found confusing. By late 2023, I had become completely dependent on Michael for information about the outside world. He controlled my mail, answered my phone, managed all my financial affairs. I rarely left the house without him and had lost touch with most of my friends. I didn't realize I had become a prisoner in my own home. The truth began to unravel in January 2024. I was looking for a receipt in Michael's desk when I accidentally found a bank statement, my bank statement, but mailed to Michael's P.O. box. The balance shown was $23,000. I stared at the number in confusion. I remembered having over $100,000 in that account. There had to be a mistake. I searched through Michael's papers and found more statements. My CD accounts, my investment portfolio, my pension deposits, everything was being managed by Michael, and the balances were much lower than I expected. I felt sick to my stomach. I waited until Michael left for work, then called the bank. "Mrs. Chen, your son Michael is listed as a joint account holder with full access. He's been making regular withdrawals for the past 3 years. How much has he withdrawn total?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Approximately $104,000 since January 2021. I dropped the phone. Over $100,000 of my life savings money David and I had worked 5 decades to accumulate had been stolen by my own son. When I examined the house paperwork more carefully, I discovered that Michael hadn't just added his name to the deed as a joint owner. The documents showed him owning 75% of the property, giving him legal authority to sell the house without my consent. I realized I had become a minority owner in my own home, the home David and I had bought in 1973, where I'd raised 4 children. That evening, when Michael returned home, I confronted him with the bank statements. "Michael, I need you to explain these withdrawals. I never authorized you to take over $100,000 from my accounts." Michael's demeanor changed instantly. The caring son disappeared, replaced by someone cold and defensive. "Mom, you're being paranoid. You specifically asked me to help manage your finances because you were getting confused and forgetful. Every withdrawal was for legitimate household expenses. Show me the receipts then," I demanded. "Show me what $100,000 bought for this household." Michael's face flushed with anger. "I can't believe you're accusing me of stealing from you. After everything I've done, after moving back home to take care of you, this is how you repay me." I felt like I was going crazy. Michael was making me question my own memory, just as he had been doing for 3 years. "I never asked you to manage my finances. I insisted." "You absolutely did," Michael shot back. "You said you didn't want to worry about money anymore. You begged me to take over your financial responsibilities." I knew Michael was lying, but his conviction was so strong that I began to doubt myself. The next morning, I secretly called my oldest daughter, Sarah. "Sarah, honey, I need to ask you something. Have I seemed confused or forgetful to you recently?" Sarah's response chilled me to the bone. "Mom, to be honest, Michael has been concerned about that. He's mentioned that you've been having memory issues and getting mixed up about finances." I realized that Michael had been poisoning my children against me for years, preparing them to believe I was becoming incompetent. "Sarah, when was the last time we talked without Michael being involved?" There was a long pause. "I can't really remember, Mom. Michael usually handles your calls now." I hung up and sat in my kitchen crying. My own children had been convinced I was losing my mental faculties. Michael had isolated me so completely that I had no allies, but I hadn't survived 73 years by being weak. Over the next week, I began to fight back by gathering evidence. I secretly photocopied every document in Michael's possession. I called my bank and requested copies of all transaction records. What I discovered was even worse than I had imagined. Michael hadn't just been stealing money, he had been planning this theft for years. The bank records showed he had been researching my accounts and investment balances long before moving in with me. I also discovered that Michael had been intercepting my mail for 3 years, not just financial statements, but cards from friends, invitations to events, even communications from my other children. He had been controlling every aspect of my life, cutting me off from the outside world, so I became entirely dependent on him. I realized I needed help. I remembered what David used to say, when you're in trouble, fight back with what you know best. For me, that was organization and documentation. I had kept detailed financial records for 50 years. Every bank statement, every investment report, every tax return was filed in my basement office. I spent 2 weeks secretly gathering evidence. I photocopied 5 years of financial statements, documented every suspicious withdrawal, created a timeline of Michael's deception. In February 2024, I called a family meeting. For the first time in over a year, I insisted that all 4 of my children come to the house. Sarah, Robert, and Jennifer arrived confused and concerned. Michael arrived last, clearly unhappy. I spread all my evidence across the coffee table where we had celebrated birthdays for decades. Bank statements, forged signatures, property documents, timeline of Michael's theft. I need you all to see what's been happening in this house, I said, my voice shaking but determined. The reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. Mom, what are you talking about? Sarah asked. Michael's been taking care of you. There has to be some mistake. Robert said, Michael wouldn't steal from you. Maybe you're just confused about some transactions. Jennifer suggested gently. I watched as my 3 other children's first reaction was to defend Michael and question my mental state exactly as he had conditioned them to do. Look at the evidence. I pleaded. Look at the bank statements. Look at the forged signatures. Michael played his role perfectly. Mom, you're embarrassing yourself, he said with apparent concern. You specifically asked me to help manage your finances because you were getting overwhelmed. Every withdrawal was for household expenses and your care. Then show us the receipts, I demanded. Show us what $104,000 bought for my care. Michael's face darkened. I shouldn't have to justify every expense to someone who can't even remember asking for help. This is exactly why I needed to take over your finances. You're becoming paranoid. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Mom, maybe we should have you evaluated by a doctor. Sometimes elderly people become suspicious when they start having cognitive issues. I felt like my world was collapsing. My own daughter was suggesting I was mentally incompetent rather than believing my son was a thief. The family meeting ended with Michael storming out. Sarah and Robert left confused and upset. Jennifer stayed to help clean up, but seemed doubtful about my accusations. Mom, I love you, but some of what you're saying sounds. I mean, why would Michael steal from you? It doesn't make logical sense. That night, I realized that Michael had not only stolen my money, he had destroyed my relationships with my other children. They viewed me as a confused elderly woman making false accusations. Over the following weeks, my situation became even more desperate. Michael moved out but continued portraying himself as a heartbroken son whose mentally declining mother had turned against him. My other children stopped visiting. Phone calls became awkward. Even my grandchildren seemed distant, having been told Grandma was going through mental health issues. I was more alone than I had ever been in my 73 years. Michael had robbed me of my family, my dignity, and my credibility. But I had not survived the Great Depression, raised 4 children, built a successful marriage, and managed complex finances for 5 decades by giving up. In March 2024, I decided I would rather die fighting than live as a victim. I researched elder abuse laws and resources. I learned that financial exploitation was a serious crime. I discovered this happened to thousands of elderly Americans every year. I contacted an elder law attorney who specialized in financial abuse cases. When I presented my evidence, the attorney was impressed by my documentation. Mrs. Chen, what happened to you is textbook elder abuse. The attorney explained, the good news is you have excellent documentation. The bad news is unwinding this will take time, money, and emotional strength. I didn't hesitate. I don't care about the time or money. I care about stopping him from doing this to anyone else and getting my life back. The attorney filed multiple lawsuits to recover the stolen funds, challenge the fraudulent property deed changes, and seek damages for elder abuse. When the attorney subpoenaed Michael's personal bank records, what we found was damning evidence. Michael's bank statements showed large deposits that corresponded exactly with withdrawals from my accounts. They showed how he had spent my life savings on luxury cars, expensive restaurants, gambling, weekend trips to Las Vegas, designer clothes, and electronics. The investigation also revealed that Michael had researched elder financial abuse techniques online. His browser history showed searches for how to gain control of elderly parents' finances and signs of dementia in elderly women. This wasn't a son in financial trouble. This was a calculated predator who had studied how to victimize his own mother. When presented with this evidence, my other children were finally forced to confront the truth. Jennifer called me first, sobbing, "Mom, I am so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have looked at the evidence instead of assuming Michael was telling the truth." Sarah visited in person, bringing flowers and tears. "I feel sick about how I treated you," she said. "You were telling the truth and I made you feel crazy for it. Can you ever forgive me?" Robert struggled most with accepting his brother's betrayal. "I can't believe our brother did this to you. How did we not see it happening?" I was gracious in accepting my children's apologies, but I was also clear about boundaries. "I forgive you," I told them, "but I need you to understand that you enabled his abuse by refusing to listen to me. I will never again allow anyone to dismiss me as confused or incompetent." As the legal case proceeded, more details emerged. Michael had been lying to my other children about my condition for years, setting up defenses for when I would eventually accuse him of theft. In September 2024, I won my legal battle. Michael was ordered to return $147,000 in stolen funds plus damages. The fraudulent property deed changes were reversed, returning full ownership of the house to me. The judge was harsh in his ruling, stating that Michael's actions were particularly egregious because they targeted a vulnerable elderly parent who trusted him completely. Michael was placed on probation and prohibited from having financial authority over elderly relatives in the future. Throughout the proceedings, Michael maintained his innocence, claiming he was just helping me. Even when faced with overwhelming evidence, he showed no remorse. At the final hearing, Michael's only statement was, "I sacrificed 3 years of my life to take care of her, and this is how she repays me." I realized Michael genuinely believed he was the victim. He had convinced himself that stealing over $100,000 from his elderly mother was justified. Today, I have recovered most of my financial losses and live independently in my restored home on Maple Street. I've resumed my Sunday family dinners, though now with only 3 of my 4 children. My relationship with Sarah, Robert, and Jennifer has slowly improved through months of honest conversations and rebuilding trust. We all had to face that we enabled Michael's abuse by not listening to Mom. Sarah reflects now. We were so conditioned to see her as fragile and Michael as helpful that we couldn't see the truth. I've forgiven my children, but the experience has changed me permanently. I got my money back. I got my house back. But I'll never get back the innocence of believing my children would never hurt me. I tell people that trust, once broken, can't be completely repaired. I've become an advocate for elder abuse awareness, speaking to community groups and helping other families recognize warning signs. I've helped expose 3 other cases of elder abuse in my community. I share my story because I want other elderly people to know they're not crazy if something feels wrong. I explain, trust your instincts. If someone is isolating you from family, gaining control of your finances, or making you question your memory, get help immediately. My advice to other elderly people is direct. Don't let anyone make you feel incompetent. Don't sign documents you don't understand. Don't give anyone control over your finances without safeguards. And if your family starts treating you differently, ask yourself who benefits from that change. I also have advice for adult children. Don't assume the sibling who's helping elderly parents is doing the right thing. Ask questions. Look at documents. Visit regularly. Financial elder abuse happens in families that look normal from the outside. I still live in my house on Maple Street, surrounded by 5 decades of memories. I tend my garden, manage my own finances, and enjoy visits from my 3 remaining children and 7 grandchildren. At 74, I've discovered reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed. David always said I was tougher than I looked. I reflect. I wish he was here to see just how tough I turned out to be. I may have lost a son, but I found myself, and at my age, that's not a bad trade. My story reminds everyone that families aren't always what they seem, that trust can be weaponized by those who should protect us most, and that the greatest betrayals often come from those we love unconditionally. But my story also proves that resilience has no expiration date, that justice is worth fighting for, and that even in our darkest moments, we can find the strength to reclaim our lives and dignity. My final words to anyone facing similar betrayal: don't let them steal your voice along with your money. Fight back. You're stronger than they want you to believe, and you deserve better than being anyone's victim, even if that someone is your own child.